predictions for Earth. That's going to be this show. I'm going to talk about climate change, population issues, toxins, chemicals for the planet. And I want to give you my own predictions. So unfortunately, a lot of this is going to be really difficult to take, and it's going to be quite sad in the beginning. Towards the end, I want to give us all some hope. We all live in this little planet called Earth. It's Spaceship Earth, as some have called it throughout the years. And we all live in this environment. We're actually all one big family, right? It's one small closed system. So in a simple aspect, when we throw something away, it's not really away. It's still here. It's in our closed system, this little planet. So when we throw a bag of garbage away, it's something that we still have to deal with. When poisons are let out in the environment, it's something we have to deal with. One of the worst disasters that have faced the human race, which is the Fukushima nuclear disaster going on right now, and it's ongoing, is a terrible, terrible disaster. And that's something that we all have to deal with moving forward. That has impacts now through the entire Pacific Ocean, as many of you have read up on this field. And there still is absolutely no way that we know how we're going to deal with that disaster ongoing. And that's only one. I'm not just picking on that one. But that's just one of many, many issues that we have to deal with moving forward. What prompted me to start this show, which is predictions for Earth, what prompted me was a show that I heard just last night on July 24th of 2017, which I'm going to get into in just a couple of minutes here. July 24th, it was the show NPR called On Point on July 24th, and they talked about cleaning up the carbon in our skies. And when I heard that, I knew I wanted to do this show for a long time and give you my own predictions. And almost like I've been warned, now we have to pass on this warning to everyone. We have to get everyone involved now. A lot of climate change is something we cannot see or feel or hear or sense at the moment, but we know that climate change is a very big deal, and 97% of the scientists that are studying this believe that climate change is real, global warming is real, and humans are playing a large part in that, and I do believe that wholeheartedly, so we need to take action now. What also prompted me to look a little bit further in this was some articles that came out by Stephen Hawking. Now, Stephen Hawking said, and this is what this is, 1,000 to 106 months. I'll get into that in just a moment. In November of 2016, so very recently, Stephen Hawking said, "We must continue to go into space for the future of humanity." Hawking said in a lecture at the University of Cambridge this week, Cambridge, England, "I don't think we will survive another 1,000 years without escaping beyond our fragile planet." So he gave us 1,000 years until we need to find a new home. In May of 2017, a short 6 months later, he has revised that 1,000-year figure. As part of the BBC's new science series called Tomorrow's World, Professor Hawking said he thinks due to climate change, destruction from nuclear war, genetically engineered viruses, overdue asteroid strikes, got to put that in there, and population growth, humans will need to find a new planet to populate within a single lifetime, revised from the 1,000-year time limit he gave us last November. Hawking states humankind must colonize another planet or perish in the next 100 years. 100 years. While things look bleak, there is some hope, according to Hawking. Humans must set their sights on another planet or perish on Earth. In 6 months, he revised his time frame of survival of the human race downward 90%. That is huge. It is alarming. We all need to take responsibility right now and listen to these messages. Now, my own prediction, I'm not quite as optimistic as Stephen Hawking. I'm within his time frame. I personally give us to 2099, where I believe that Earth will be largely uninhabitable as we see it now for life in general, but certainly for humans. Again, that sounds like a really nasty future and a very terrible prediction that I'm giving you right now. And of course, I'm an eternal optimist. The reason I'm saying it is I believe it's true. If we stay on the current path that we are right now, we're all done. Most of us are done. And if we take action now, as a lot of these experts that I'm going to share with you as we move forward, there is hope, and we can hold optimism. But again, it's one of those things we have to take care of now. Being a chiropractor, being a natural health provider, being a prevention specialist. Now that's why people come to me, because they come in because either they have an illness, a catastrophic illness, their life is not where they want it, their quality of life is terrible, or they want to make sure they don't end up like other people around them. They come into me and say, what can I be doing, Dr. Fuller, right now to make the quality of life moving forward in my life? How can I make that quality of life better, reduce suffering, reduce pain, and so forth? That's what I focus on. It's all about prevention. So that's why I'm saying these things that are alarming, but also very, very true and very well expected and accepted by the scientific community. We have to take action now, big action in 2017, or by 2099, life as we know it is going to be radically different. Okay? I don't have a crystal ball. I don't know, but most people agree that it's going to be a big, big change. The tipping point is sometimes what this is called. The tipping point is when you reach threshold, now the boulder's going to go downhill. This is from Berkeley News, the University of Berkeley. This is back in 2012, so this article is 5 years old. Scientists uncover evidence of impending tipping point for Earth. A prestigious group of scientists from around the world is warning that population growth, that's something we're going to be talking more about as we move forward. Widespread destruction of natural ecosystems and climate change may be driving Earth towards an irreversible change in the biosphere, basically nature itself. A planet-wide tipping point that have destructive consequences absent adequate preparation and mitigation. Meaning if we don't take action now, we're going to reach that tipping point where there's no return. It would be a new world biologically at that point, warns Anthony Barnowski, I hope I'm saying that correctly, professor of integrated biology at the University of California, Berkeley. Data suggests that there will be a reduction in biodiversity and severe impacts on much of which we depend on to sustain life, including, for example, fisheries, agriculture, forest products, and clean water. This could happen within just a few generations. Just a few generations. When you hear that word, and I had to look that up just to be sure I had an accurate year, a few generations sounds like a huge long time. Well, keep in mind that a generation is only 25 years on average. A few generations, let's say it's 3 generations, is only 75 years. Well within that prediction that I gave you of 2099, and well within Stephen Hawking's idea that we have 100 years or less to go find a new home. So that's an article 5 years ago that's saying the same thing. Currently, to support a population of 7 billion people, we have 7.3 billion now. About 43% of Earth's land surface has been converted to agricultural urban use. The population is expected to rise to 9 billion by 2045. That's not very long away. That's a generation at range. A current trend suggests that half the Earth's land surface will be disturbed just for our general needs. This is disturbingly close to a global tipping point. And then ecosystem stress. So here's the population numbers that we need to know. Overpopulation is huge. If we, let's say we held the Earth at 2 billion, which is impossible now, we're already at 7.3, we probably wouldn't be having this discussion because we wouldn't have so many people that need so much stuff to get through their day-to-day lives. The current world population, now this is from the UN, this is in 2015 now, 2015. Population 7.3 billion is expected to reach 8.5 billion by 2030. That's 1.2 billion more in 13 years. 1.2 billion people in 13 years. That's such a short period of time to add so many people, right? As you look at the population, since we've kept records, right? You see the population is just basically a flat line until the past century. It just stood up on its end like this. We expect 9.7 billion by 2050 and 11.2 billion by 2100, which is, again, the UN. China and India remain the 2 largest countries in the world, each with more than 1 billion people. But by 2022, the population of India is expected to overtake China. Along the 10 largest countries in the world, 1 is in Africa, 5 are in Asia, 2 are in Latin America, 1 in North America, United States, and 1 is in Europe, the Russian Federation. So by 2050, 6 countries are expected to exceed 300 million people. That's just talking about all these people that need water, clean water, agriculture. And if we start pulling people, more and more people out of poverty, they want a better life. A better life typically means more stuff. More stuff means more stress on the environment. They want bigger houses with air conditioning and electricity and food and maybe vehicles, and now we're burning more fossil fuels. They want more of the lifestyle that we have in the United States. You see, so that's going to put even added stress. Not only is the population just exploding, but that population is more demanding of a better life. And you can see pictures from around the world of more of these impoverished nations getting more power. And we've heard about all the news from China that a lot of their new power plants are coal-fired. Now we know all the pollution issues that are going on in China. I don't have time to go into that. Most of you are aware of that also. So we can see that there's more and more stress being put on the environment all the time. Now I want to talk about a couple of cities around the world just to give us an idea of global warming. There are some global warming naysayers. That's fine. Whatever you believe, that's fine. I'm just going to talk about the rest of you that do believe that there are issues that need to be changed now. Well, in the city of Miami, Florida, I've known now for some time because I've read the reports, is Miami is not getting any support from their state government, state of Florida. Miami is not getting any support from the federal government because there's still naysayers there. So Miami is raising their own money to start dealing with sea level rise from global warming with the melting ice shelves on the North and South Poles. So this is from the BBC in 2017, just down the coast from Donald Trump's weekend retreat. Businesses in South Florida are experiencing regular episodes of water in the streets. And the battle against rising seas, the region which has more to lose than almost anyone else in the world, is becoming ground zero. Tides are higher than they have been in decades, and far higher when this swampy tropical corner of the United States began drained and built on a century ago. And by the way, this is Amanda Ruggieri from BBC who wrote this article. Great article online. I encourage you to read the entire thing. BBC, April 4th, 2017. The title of it is Miami's Fight Against Rising Seas. Many of South Florida's drainage systems and seawalls are no longer enough. That means not only more flooding, but challenges for the infrastructure that residents depend on every day, from septic tanks to wells. So you can imagine when septic tanks get flooded, that's going to be a mess. Now we have less clean water, which means that they're going to have to get clean water from different sources. That gets very expensive, and so on it goes. The consequences of sea level rise are going to be occurring way before the tide reaches your doorstep, says William Sweet, an oceanographer. Another part of the problem, as I mentioned, is South Florida is built on a swamp. The only reason we live here is we learned how to drain it, kill mosquitoes, and we created air conditioning. There's going to be a need for very serious conversation on how we're going to be dealing with this, said George Vallejo, the mayor of North Miami Beach. The development that has happened here over the last 40 or 50 years has not been helpful to the situation. We've paved over a lot of the Everglades. We've paved over a lot of the greenage. In retrospect, if we would have done things differently, we would have done things differently if we knew what we know now. Continuing with Miami, because this is again ground zero of what's going to be happening. Here's another article by an online, it's a real estate online magazine called The Real Deal, by James Teeple, March 10th of 2017. This one is titled, Miami Beach Mayor Says Coastal Cities Need More State and Federal Help to Deal with Sea Level Rise. As you probably know, in the current political climate, that's going to be rough, at least coming from the federal government. And as I alluded to, the state of Florida is so far resisting any support. Miami Beach Mayor Philip Levine called upon federal and state authorities to help us more, noting that Miami Beach has raised about $500 million to install pumps. $500 million just for some better pumps. That's it. noting that city roads and undertake to raise city roads, also to raise city roads, so the money is going there too, and undertake beach replenishment measures. Levine says nearly all the money has been raised by the city itself with no help from federal and state governments. He had an ad out that he was walking his dog through flooded streets of Miami Beach saying he got floated into his office. He said Miami Beach voters got the message, agreeing to raise their stormwater fees by 50 to 70%. So they're collecting local taxes that's going to be put right into raising streets, raising seawalls, getting pump systems back into shape. So you can see Miami is really taking its own steps, saying it's coming. We're not ready. We're not waiting for anybody else to say it's coming. We're seeing the writing on the wall. Now, I read a very disturbing article about Mexico City, and I do encourage you to look at this. Now, it's a little bit detached from us here in the United States, but it again is reflective to a lot of urban centers that are going to run into a lot of problems. You probably have been aware of the pollution problems in Mexico City, but this one is going to really see what kind of shape the city is in. Mexico City, parched and sinking, faces a water crisis. Climate change is threatening to push a crowded capital towards a breaking point. By Michael Kimmelman, New York Times. This article I found on populationconnection.org. I believe that organization used to be zpg.org, which is Zero Population Growth, which had been in existence for many, many years. This is June of 2017. So they created the Mexico City's Grand Canal in the late 1800s. And then as soon as it came online, it had problems finishing because it was gravity fed. And Mexico City, 1.5 miles above sea level, so there's no sea level rise issue direct in Mexico City being 1.5 miles up, but it is sinking and collapsing in on itself. And it is happening faster and faster, and the canal is just one victim, which is a vicious cycle. Short on water, Mexico City keeps drilling deeper for more, weakening the ancient clay lake beds on which the Aztecs first built much of the city, causing it to crumble even further. Some of these issues are also in existence in the state of California with that huge freshwater aquifer underneath California, which is just being pumped out at an alarming rate. And now there's some sinking happening there. You can go ahead and look that up if you want. The cycle in Mexico City is being made worse by climate change. More heat, more drought means more evaporation and yet more demand for water, adding pressure to tap distant reservoirs at a staggering cost or further drain underground aquifers and hasten the collapse. Very expensive to get water pumped up for 21 million people in Mexico City. Getting all that water pumped up 1.5 miles is an extraordinary amount of further greenhouse gas release and so forth, which makes it terrible. A lot of the population there relies on trucks to come by to give them fresh water, if you read this article, which is very long, very interesting, and very disturbing. By 2050, there will be more than 700 million urban climate refugees on the move. That's around the world now, around the world. Unlike traffic jams or crime, climate change isn't something most people can easily feel or see. That's one of the reasons why there's not so much alarm in a lot of us. As Mexico City's Chief Resilience Officer, Arnoldo Kramer, put it, climate change has become the biggest long-term threat to the city's future, and that's because it's linked to water, health, air pollution, traffic disruption, floods, landslides, and so forth. No amount of walls, guns, barbed wire, armed aerial drones, or permanently deployed mercenaries will be able to save 1/2 of the planet from the other. And just thinking for a moment, if that city really falls apart, where are all those people going to go? Where are they all going to go? Interesting. Then, as I talked about earlier, this was the program that I heard last night on NPR, Tom Ashbrook's show On Point, July 24th of 2017. He had a couple of guests. James Hansen, professor at Columbia University's Earth Institute. He is known as the father of climate change awareness. Thank you very much, Mr. Hansen. John Niles is the director of the Carbon Institute. He works with universities and governments. They work with universities and governments around the world to manage carbon dioxide. A couple of statistics in this show that I learned. I took some notes. They estimate it could cost $500 trillion to clean CO2 from the atmosphere that we have now if we don't go into negative carbon dioxide emission, which means from this second moving forward, we decrease, right? We slow down burning fossil fuels, all of them. Okay? It could cost us $500 trillion. Again, it's a number that most of you listening to that, you're like, I can't put that in perspective. We can't. We're $20 trillion in debt with the United States. It would cost us $500 trillion to clean the air. So what they were saying is, and the conclusion was, we need to reduce our carbon dioxide production now. Population will need to be controlled, as we talked about. The Arctic tundra is melting. That releases more CO2, which creates even further accelerated climate change and global warming. The solution for that, to keep the tundra from melting, is again to reduce global warming now by decreasing fossil fuel consumption now, to cool the Earth a little bit, to prevent that cooling, to create cooling, so those ice shelves don't melt and release even further trapped CO2, if you can see that vicious cycle that needs to be avoided. 40 billion tons of CO2 are released into the atmosphere each year. A couple of other things that they said we need to do now is stop deforestation. One big reason for deforestation, by the way, is we cut down trees to make cropland. We make cropland not for people to eat, unfortunately, but to feed to cattle, to make more meat. And as I'm going to say at the end of this, what we can do individually is we have to eat less meat as humans on this planet. We need to eat less meat. 7.3 billion people cannot eat a high meat diet. 8.5 billion, 15 billion, whatever the number is going to be, we're going to have to be mostly vegetarian if we're going to try to survive on the planet. That is a huge draw, and I don't have time to get into it. We could do another show on this, is the environmental and ecological stressors from a high meat diet. Look it up, it's incredibly important to know. Replant forests was one of their solutions that they said. That's what we need to do, is all that deforestation we did, we need to start planting more trees because they will help scrub the air. Fossil fuels need to be more expensive. Renewables need to be less expensive. If we all could make solar panels, electric cars, or whatever it might be, much, much cheaper, and make oil and gas and coal and wood much, much more expensive to burn for power and so forth, we would begin to make that switch tomorrow. My brother likes to remind us that small car and bicycle sales went up drastically in 2008. If you remember, when gas prices approached $5 a gallon in some places in the United States, and even in Alaska approached like $8 a gallon. When that happened for a short period of time, people started buying small cars. Now what's interesting is because gas prices have again been low, the sales of big trucks went up. So that's something we need to look at and change. One thing you might want to look at is the Nature Conservancy, that environmental group. Their website is now plantabillion.org. One word, plantabillion.org, which means let's go ahead and plant 1 billion trees, and that's going to be a step in the right direction. I want to talk about in a moment when I'm going to talk about what we can do individually, is I popped on the Union of Concerned Scientists website, and I love what these folks are doing, a lot of what I've read about. Their website is ucsusa.org. Just put in Union of Concerned Scientists into Sir Google, and it will pop up. Just a little bit, they just had some facts on here, some guidelines that they put up. Global warming is happening now. The planet's temperature is rising. The trend is clear and unmistakable. Every one of the past 40 years has been warmer than the 20th century average. 2016 was the hottest year on record. The 12 warmest years on record have all occurred since 1998. Globally, the average surface temperature has increased more than 1 degree Fahrenheit since the late 1800s. Most of that increase has occurred in just the past 3 decades. We, humans, are the cause. We are overloading our atmosphere with carbon dioxide, which traps heat and steadily drives up the planet's temperature. Where does all this carbon come from? The fossil fuels that we burn for energy: coal, natural gas, and oil, plus the loss of forests from deforestation, especially in the tropics. And again, we have to look at what we're consuming for food. The scientific evidence is clear. Within the scientific community, there is no debate. An overwhelming majority of climate scientists agree that global warming is happening and that human activity is the primary cause. The primary cause. Okay, that's overwhelming. That's a really difficult cup of tea to have. That's hard. It's big. When I give a prediction of 2099 largely uninhabitable, that's hard to even grasp, and you might have even turned me off by now. So $500 trillion and huge scrubbers and planting 1 billion trees, to the individual that might be watching this, that sounds, what can I do? I can't do anything. That's out of control. So it's going to happen also from the ground up. Something like the Paris agreements and so forth that unfortunately we pulled out of would be a start. That's a start. But even the scientists say, even if we adopt all of that, it's not going to be enough. So we have to work as individuals. We can, as individuals, reduce our consumption. Can we turn the AC up a little bit, meaning not as cool in the summer? A degree. We could all do that, probably. If you're not old or have a medical condition, whatever, well, most of us could do that. If you need heat in the winter, you could make it a little bit cooler, maybe a degree. You could do that. You could get energy assessments. You could make the house a little bit more insulated. If you are going to move your house, maybe you get something smaller. Maybe more people live together. Maybe the yard is smaller. We know that those green lawns that we all tend to keep need to be smaller. That is an environmental tax. We need to plant more. We need more vegetation. Smaller yards, more vegetation. Gardens, flowers, shrubs, trees, any vegetation that grows out of the ground instead of just the green grass. We need to reduce our toxins. One of the reasons I put that there is reducing our toxins, because then we tend to put fertilizers and weed killers to keep that green grassy lawn. How about we let that go? We could do that. Some of us will do that. If I knew that the house that I live in, or the condo that I live in right now, I was going to live there permanently, I would let it all go. I would let the grass just dry up. And I would definitely plant more. Maybe I'll do that. Maybe I'll do that. I shut off the fertilizing for sure. I shut off, when I owned it now from the previous owner, I shut off the fertilizing, I shut off the insecticides and so forth. And whatever happens, happens. But I'm just not going to put those poisons in your house, if you will, meaning planet Earth, in your house. I'm not going to do it. If we have to put flags on our lawn that says, no kids and dogs can play on this, what are we doing? What are we doing to that? That's not going away. It's in that contained system. Could we do that? Could we change that? We could. Maybe we need to pick weeds a little bit more and stop spraying things on them in general as individuals. It's not good for our pets or our kids or you or the planet. We could take little steps like that. Maybe smaller cars. We could do that. Smaller yards, as I talked about. Smaller families, overpopulation is an issue. Some people need to look at that. I definitely did for years and years. It's one of the reasons I chose not to have children, and that's by my choice, is because there's just too many people. So I made that choice, and that's something that we can do. The Scientific American had a great article here, How Does Meat in the Diet Take an Environmental Toll? And it goes into all of the stressors on the environment by not eating crops directly and then feeding those crops directly to livestock. And that's a huge water waste, energy waste, fertilizers, all of that manure has to go somewhere. Look sometime, if you want to, at how the Mississippi drains into the Gulf, and then the dead zone in the Gulf from all of that runoff. There's a huge dead zone there because of what we're doing. And if we adopt more of a vegetable diet, a lot of that will go away. Can we as individuals eat more vegetables, more organic vegetables? We could do that. More locally sourced vegetables. We can also do that. Those would be some reasonable steps that we as individuals could take right now. Fewer chemicals on our bodies. We could go to the websites ewg.org, Environmental Working Group, and safecosmetics.org, and pick personal care products that has less chemicals for your children, for your daughters, for all of us. Personal care products. On ewg.org, they have great ways to shop around for cleaning products around the home. Get away from the poisons that you have to wear gloves for and masks and whatever. Maybe you can do most of your cleaning with vinegar and baking soda, like a lot of people are adopting, myself included. You can take these steps here to make sure that we are preserving a planet that's going to work for us. This little house that we have, that we all have to live on, is depending on us to take individual actions and collective actions right now to preserve humankind. I'm Dr. Scott Fuller.